Hi, Joe.
Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I spent the entire weekend. I stepped away from like adminning, I don't know, like what, email, four emails, right, and two
Uh-huh.
groups, and just all this stuff. So I just created jewelry all weekend, and it was really cool. It was nice to get back to my metalsmithing
Oh,
sort of
that's awesome.
roots. Yeah.
That sounds great.
What about you?
I went to a Wachama retreat
Oh,
this
that's
weekend.
right. How was
Yes.
that?
It was great. I got to share the space with my husband and my sister. It was my sister's first time at a medicine ceremony, period. So I was really happy that we got to share that time and that space together. And yeah, it was nice. Oh, I met a listener.
Okay, tell me about that.
We were just talking about the retreat and stuff and all that, and then it came up. She's like, "Oh my god, I listened to your podcast." So, hi, Steph.
Ah, yay! That's so exciting. It really is exciting to meet people that listen without
Yeah.
any direct connection. You're just like,
Yes.
what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was fun.
Did she tell you she's a fangirl?
Yeah, she was excited. She had said that she had just shared it with her friend that morning, so that
Yay!
was cool.
Good. Keep sharing it.
So
Share it more.
we appreciate you.
Yes, very much so. Listen, I would be excited to find our podcast if it wasn't me because I would want to share it. And I mean, I get excited when I find a podcast that I can actually listen to. There's one I found, I forget what it's called though, because I don't know, but they talk about spirituality versus like paranormal. Is it, or
Oh,
I'm sorry, metaphysical versus paranormal or something
okay.
like that. But so people will send these questions in and the questions are really cool, like kind of which curse you, what is a demon or stuff like that. And then
Mm,
the one of the co-hosts is a doctor,
okay.
and she will answer it from a very scientific metaphysical viewpoint, which I
Mm-hmm.
just love that. I was like, what? This is
Yeah.
exactly. And then the other one is a psychic medium, and she answers it from more of a spiritual aspect. So it's actually very cool. I'm bummed that I don't remember it off the top of my head, but we'll
You
put
can
it
look
in
it up
the
and we can put it in the
put it
show
in the show
notes.
notes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my whole intention with this podcast was to share the information that I wish that I could have found on another
Yeah.
podcast
Yep.
before.
Yeah.
Because I'm a podcast junkie and I listen to a lot of stuff, but most of the stuff that I listen to is like true crime.
Yeah. I
And when
know.
I got into trying to listen to more of a spirituality perspective, it was some of it either was like, I can't listen to it because they put like some weird like echo effect on the voice.
Right.
Or I'm like, I can't listen to that while I'm driving. And then there's others where like the audio quality is just really bad.
Yep.
And there's so many factors to it that I was like, now I'm picky
Right.
because of the true crime podcasts that are produced really well, that I'm like, no, I have higher standards for all my podcasts. So
Right.
I try to live up to that.
Yeah, mine is more of a content thing.
Hmm.
Lots of really super woo woo, lofty, like just stuff that's based in, not science.
Uh-huh.
I just have a hard time with, and it doesn't hold my interest. I want to be fascinated with what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I want to learn something. There's just a very specific all of these specific points that have to come together in order for me to go, wow, like I'm going to listen to.
Yes.
Morbid is one of my absolute favorite true crime podcasts. And I love their banter and I love how they both explain things. Whether
Hmm.
it's Ash or Elena, they bring, sort of, they're funny. It's just
Yeah.
I love that energy. So
Yeah.
that's sort of what draws me to a podcast is the energy.
Yeah. And I love My Favorite Murder. That's
Yeah,
my
I
favorite.
haven't
And
started listening to that. I've listened to like one episode, I think.
they're the
Um,
OGs.
yeah, I was distracted, so
Yeah.
I'll get
No,
into
I
that
really
one
like
day.
them. If you want to start, the hometown episodes, the mini-sodes are like quicker, fast, and just easier to listen to, I guess, because the other ones are pretty long.
Yeah.
You have to have more time for those. But for me, because I usually listen to stuff while I'm driving, that's why. But
All right.
Anyways,
Yeah,
so do we have anything coming up? Any
we
events?
do. We have Journey the Wild coming up November 5th through November 7th, and that's going to take place in Idlewild, California. It's really exciting that we are starting on our venture of
Yes.
retreats. If it's up to me, that's I would just do podcasting retreats and nothing else. But
Mm-hmm.
I've put that out there to the universe, so let's hope. Yeah. So, how many spots do we have available?
We just have a couple spots left.
Oh,
So
that's
if you're
exciting.
yeah, if you're interested, shoot us an email,
Mhm.
esotericspodcast@gmail.com, and we can work out payment plans if you need to or answer any questions you may have. We also have full information about the retreat on our website,
Yeah.
esotericspodcast.com.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about shamanism.
This is very exciting.
Yes. So um there's a lot of information on this. So I'll try to keep it to like what I felt like was most pertinent and interesting. Because I know about so in Mesoamerican culture we have curanderos. So and what I found that was and the curanderos are literally just healers, which are what shamans essentially are. However, shamanism dates back like
Yeah.
prehistoric times, like down like they have found evidence of shamans back to the Paleolithic times in cave art that's like 30,000 years old. And some people claim that it's up to 500,000 years old because of some sculptures and stuff that they have found in Siberia.
So, shamans are the actual OGs.
Yes, they are they are so they were the original healers, the original doctors. So before doctors and before you had, structured medicine and that kind of stuff, you had shamans. Like that if you were sick, if something was ailing you, you would go to your shaman. That's who you would see. So shamanism has grown in popularity in the last few decades thanks to some people who have gone to do more work. So one of the books that I read or that I am reading, because he's written several books, are there's these books by Alberto Villalobos, and he's actually the creator of the Four Winds Institute, and they're actually like a shamanic school.
Cool.
So they have online courses. You can go in person too. They have a place over here in Joshua Tree that I'm very interested in possibly attending. But he teaches classes. He's also written books, and so I'll link those in the show notes. But he is actually the anthropologist who spent time down in Peru just as an anthropologist. And but because of spending so much time in the Amazon and working with shamans, he eventually became or he's recognized as a shaman himself because of all the information that he's learned, the work that he's done, the information that he's shared with people. But the at the core of it, so the term shaman is often loosely applied to anyone claiming like a natural lifestyle or nature-based spirituality. But much like a curandero or curanderex, nobody can just call themselves a shaman. A shaman is essentially recognized by their community. Once they start, like they help people, it's the community that puts that title on them or gives them that title.
Yeah, because doesn't the community actually support them with like food and shelter and honoring them and all of that?
Yeah, in tradition, that's how it usually was. It's not like they weren't people that necessarily charged for their services. It was an exchange.
Right.
So but it's because they didn't even have money, and so in certain
Sure.
this goes back so far. There were times where they didn't even have money. It wasn't money wasn't a thing. So
Right.
it was an energetic exchange
Yeah.
where I offer you healing and you maybe bring me some food or bring me some things that I may need. And that's one of the things that I did want to address because that's like a common misconception that people have now of saying like, oh well, healers shouldn't charge for their work that they're doing. No, it's still an energy exchange, and money is essentially energy. So there's no reason why someone should be giving you their energy and you shouldn't be giving them something back.
Exactly.
Now, somebody who is a shaman they have the option to work with you based off of, however they see fit. If you can't afford their services, but maybe you can offer something else in return. But that's on a person by person basis, and it's at the disclosure of the shaman themselves. The point being is that they're there to help people. So I think truly, from that perspective, they they make that choice, and it has to feel, I think it has to feel good for both parties involved, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you come up and this person's like, I want $5,000 for this service, and you're like, sir, I can't afford that. You maybe move on to somebody else.
I'm sorry. I cannot support that. So a lot of times when I'm giving Akashic readings, you know, I will regress, or past lives will pop up, and
Hmm.
they're where people were shamans,
Hmm.
and they're always very ancient. They're always, located in some sort of indigenous culture, right? It's never like the idiot at the Capitol on, January 6th with the stupid bull hat. It's never anything like that. It's
Hmm.
always very sacred and beautiful, and it's just a very beautiful energy. So
Yeah. So the hearth of shamanism, um, anthropologically, has been traced back to Siberia, to about 30,000 years ago. Again, there are other much older interpretations of like things that could be traced back to possibly a shaman, but this is what has been found with like actual evidential proof. But the word shamanism comes from the word of the Machu Tingis tribe of Siberia, which means one who knows. And shamans were the first physicians, diagnosticians, psychotherapists,
nice.
religious functionaries, magicians, performing artists, and storytellers.
Badasses.
Yeah, and the shaman though is unique that they not only have an increased facility for traveling into the non-ordinary realms, and so we talked about this with Erica in our interview with Erica Buenaflor, as far as the non-ordinary realms, the upper world, the middle world, and
Yeah.
the lower world. So doing that, but they also use their spirit relationships to create changes that will manifest in the physical world, either for healing of individuals or for the community. So that definition itself differentiates shamans from other types of practitioners,
Hmm.
like mediums who use altered states of consciousness. But so mediums can travel into that, but they don't necessarily take action
In the
in those
actual
altered
realms, they don't
states.
work in the realms.
Right,
Yeah.
correct. And then sorcerers may take action in the altered states, but not necessarily to heal.
Interesting. So there's a definitive, I don't know, sort of function.
Yes, the core being healing.
Yeah.
So, in altered states of consciousness, they possess the ability to enter those states as at will, and they can control themselves while moving in and out of their states. And they can also meditate between the needs of the spirit world and those of the physical world in a way that can be understood and used by the community. And so, by serving the needs of the community that cannot be met by other practitioners or other disciplines like physicians, psychiatrists, priests, leaders. So that's the difference of what sets apart a shaman versus other people.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It's fascinating. I didn't know that about shamans being able to enter those, different
The
worlds
realms.
and actually perform, tasks in those.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
There was one point that I read throughout my research that was made, that all shamans are animists, but not all animists are shamans. So, animism is the belief that objects, places, creatures, all things have carry a distinct spiritual essence.
Hmm.
So there are people who believe that they're called animists, and that is a particular belief system. But not all people who believe that are automatically shamans. However, all shamans do carry that belief.
Okay.
So, the most interesting thing that I found with all of this is that actually women were the first
Of
shamans.
course we were. Of course we
Yeah,
were.
of
I told you
course.
about that past life where it was all females and they were badass sorcerers.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah. So there's this book. It's called Dawn Between the Dawn by Jeffrey Ash. And in that book, he's actually a Russian linguist, and he discovered that several Siberian tribes, including the Tungus, were descended from one ancient tribe. And then the researchers found that the words for a male shaman are different for in each of the tribes because the words were borrowed or invented long before the tribes branched apart. But the core of this, the lesson from this, is that the word for the female shaman in all those tribes is derived from the same root word in the language of their common ancestors. In the original language, the word also means bear. Kind of random.
Okay.
But the research proved that originally the tribes multiplied and they went their separate ways, but the only shamans were female.
Very cool.
So there are different categories of healers, even within shamanism. There are three categories for modern or contemporary shamans. So those include those who either come from an unbroken shamanic tradition and they continue to practice in that tradition, usually in their native culture. So these are like when you talk about the shamans in the Amazon, for example, those are generally people because they've lived there their whole lives, they trace back their traditions, they never lost where they came from. So that would be your example of that. Or there are people who come from a shamanic tradition but they serve to bridge that tradition and the modern Western world, often by adding ceremonies and rituals that were not necessary in their indigenous culture. So that's kind of like what I've experienced here, because when you attend ceremonies and traditions here, a lot of it is mixed. It's Mesoamerican and it's also Amazonian, it's Brazilian. Some of it can be Eurocentric. It's all mixed because we're all different cultures. Like
Right.
we're mixed with as it is just in our DNA. So there's that. And then the third is those who are called by spirit to serve the needs of their community as shamans, though they may be long separated culturally from their original shamanic roots.
Oh, all right. So does that include non-indigenous shamanic practitioners because they are not shamans; they are called shamanic practitioners. That's what I
Y-
call them anyway.
Right. Yes. Uh, but because there are, you can find historic evidence of shamans all throughout the world.
Through
I
all
mean, we're talking,
cultures. So it's not
yes,
specific to one
yeah,
specific culture. Okay,
exactly.
that's
So
good to know.
because there's evidence of them in Russia, in Asia, and then obviously in the Americas. So yeah, it's all over the world. Australia as well. And what it reminds me of is, I'm gonna get a little bit into aliens, but
It all breaks down to an alien always.
it usually does.
Mhm.
Well, okay, what Dolores Cannon would talk about, that when, I mean, we look at them as aliens because they're not from this world, like they're not from Earth. But when these otherworldly beings came down, and some of them came down and some of them just sent the information down to like the global consciousness or to the consciousness of mankind. So that would make sense that they would do that, and they would spread out this information would just be out in the consciousness of the earth, so anyone could pick it up. It
Anyone
doesn't
could pick it up,
necessarily
right?
belong to just one area, one geographical location.
So when you see white people calling themselves shamans, do you consider it to be misappropriation?
Okay,
Let's get into it. Break it
I
down.
would, yeah, I would say yes and no.
Okay. That's clear. Clears it right up.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, I would say yes and no. Okay, first we have to acknowledge the fact that what I said in the beginning, that the fact that the title of shaman has to be given to you by your community.
Okay.
So if are you actually doing the work? And are you doing the work with integrity? And then has that title been bestowed upon you by your community? Or did you just go and learn a bunch of shit online, read a bunch of books, and then decide to call yourself a shaman?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's that. The other thing, and this is where white people have to be careful, because when colonizers, Europeans came into this continent, right? And they looked at indigenous people and they saw that they were dressed differently. than them, and they did things, they cooked differently than them, they carried on their lives in a much different way than what they knew. And so because it was different, they just labeled it wrong. And then the persecution and all of that that came up about because they felt that they were better than them.
Yep.
So it's annoying, and it is infuriating sometimes to see, like, we were persecuted as a people of color, people of indigenous roots, for our practices. Our language was stolen from us. We were separated, we were killed, we were raped, we were, all of this, at the hands of Europeans. And now all of the sudden, like, people with European ancestry get to make it trendy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the infuriating nature behind it. So I would say, if someone who is white and has an inclination to look into these things, I think there has to be a balance of, like, okay, yeah, I understand that maybe you feel called to this because maybe in a past life you weren't white. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well,
Right.
that's probably 99% of the
Yeah.
case, yeah.
But also you have to acknowledge, like, the place that you come from now and the privilege that you hold now. What are you doing to pay reparations for that?
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to. It's I think that's part of the lesson, that's part of the work that you're here to do. You're probably not here just to be a shaman. You're also here to show, like, I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, and I'm sorry for what my people did,
Right.
and
And
do something
reparations,
about it.
that doesn't mean, writing a check, and it's not a punitive thing. In this
Mhm.
instance, as with everything, it's behind intention. So, if you are of European descent, but your soul at the very level says, I am drawn to shamanism in ways that I can't understand,
Mhm.
okay, then, find a reputable teacher, all of that stuff. But then once you are in the practice, that's when reparations begin. Giving
Yeah.
back to community, being in service to others, all of those things. That's how you can make your
Yeah.
reparations. It doesn't have to be some punitive, well, I don't owe them anything because it wasn't me that did it, and all that nonsense that a
Right.
lot of the people like to say. It's not.
Mhm.
Why do I have to pay reparations? I wasn't even
Because
born.
you may not have done it, but you do benefit from it.
Yes, absolutely. And yes. And so, with the intention of how you're going to give back to others as a result of that, that's how you pay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe in that instance, you charge a different price,
Mm-hmm.
a lower price for people of color, or you don't charge them, or you direct that business, that possible income, to a person of color instead.
Yep.
Like, maybe you only work with, I don't know. I,
Yes.
I
No,
don't
these
know
are
what that looks
great.
like.
These are great suggestions. I always get offered a lower price point for, woo woo stuff, classes, workshops, that sort of thing. Here on
Mhm.
the West Coast, it's kind of a big thing, like, reparations, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, like, I have, like, when I took the my Nahuatl language class, that class is only open to people of color.
Nice.
And you can't be mad at it, because
I mean, you
because
can, but it's not going to do any good.
it's our language, it's our ancestry, and if a white person comes into that class and takes up that spot, that's one less person who's not learning their own culture, their own ancestry. You're taking up space that doesn't belong to you. So, yeah, there's a lot to that.
Okay, so now on the reverse of that, how do we balance that with it not being turned on us in a negative manner on people of color, right? Like, you can't come into this white only group because you're taking up space. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think of these things.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, how do
Uh-huh.
we reverse that, or say, well, how do we
Well,
justify that?
So this is what the Nahuatl teacher says is like, if you want to learn another language, you have a plethora of other resources that you can go to. That's the thing. It's
Sure.
We're not saying like don't learn it.
No,
We're just saying you just can't learn it here. Like
within
you
this.
have you have institutions around the country that you can go to. You can go to a university and learn it. Like you can buy books, you can pay somebody else to teach you. I don't know, but it's just this specific place. How do we get it to not turn around and bite us in the ass? I
Right?
mean,
That's the question.
we're not doing it from a
No.
hateful perspective of like saying like, oh, you can't because you're light skinned. Like
Right.
it's just it's not your culture. Like that's it. Don't take it personally. It's not We're not discriminating.
Well, it's a fine line because I mean, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm just
No,
like
I know what you're
devil's
saying.
advocating here because
Yes.
it's a very fine line. Because anytime we say, "Well, we're not doing this," other people say, "Well, yeah, you are kind of." So it's interesting. It's just an interesting conversation to have. And this might not
Right.
be the right container because we want to learn about shamanism, but
Yeah.
it's something that I always think of, like how can I
Okay.
create these boundaries without getting bit in the ass.
Well, okay. Well, it breaks down to this. It breaks down to the fact that racism is a system of oppression, and
Yes.
we are not creating whole systems here.
No.
We're talking about an individual class that is it's like a closed practice. And we're saying like this is to help our people relearn their language, their ancient traditions. That's it.
That's it.
We're not
Okay.
Yeah, because racism is a system. It's a system placed by people in power who are saying no, you can't do this, and building whole laws and whole systems that disproportionately benefit one group over the other. We're not doing that here. This isn't a whole system of law or governance, or a city or whatever, where we're saying like you can't live here. No, this is a single class. We're just talking about learning,
Yes.
essentially.
Okay. There you go. I love it. You broke it right down.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the shamanistic perspective on disease. And this actually has we've talked about this when we talked about the chakras and Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is just ancient medicine. So this is kind of more of that. So the perspective on individual disease is different in shamanism than in conventional medical views. And in shamanistic views, similar symptoms or diseases do not stem from the same underlying or root energetic problem. There's also the belief that community disharmony often manifests in individual illness. So we can see how, for example, like Native American people and that being prone to alcoholism,
Right.
that would be that belief of like it's because of that disharmony within the community, and that it causes people to seek something, to numb out,
Yes.
or yeah. um Also, that any illness may have a significant underlying spiritual or energetic issue, regardless of the form in which the illness manifests, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, or relational, and that certain illnesses are more likely to have a spiritual component that may respond to shamanic healing techniques. So certain ones, so like psychological diagnosis like depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, autism, and addictions. So this is why with shamanism, a lot of the work that's done is done with plant medicines, and
Right.
plant medicines are have been shown, even now they're being scientifically shown to help to treat these things. I was just listening to this podcast where this doctor used to use ketamine therapy, and now it's all psychedelics.
Ah, okay. Good. Okay. Good.
Yes,
Yes.
so he
Yay.
does psychedelics there, but shamans have been using ayahuasca and different plants and even animal medicines that are basically DMT, which is just another
Yes.
another form of psychedelics, also mushrooms as well. So they've already been using these plant medicines, animal medicines, to treat these specific diseases.
That's very, very cool. So do all shamans use plant medicines? Are there some shamans that don't?
No, I don't think so, because I've actually heard of shamans that work exclusively doing soul retrievals and illuminations, and they don't actually get into plant medicines. So, not all of them. I don't know historically, like back to, the dawn of time or whatever, when they first found this information.
Hmm.
Uh, but so that's where we've gotten all of what the work that people are doing now. Again, talking about with psychedelics, working with psychedelics, and even just with plants and just herbalism.
Yes.
We don't have to get into stuff that makes you hallucinate and all that stuff.
No.
Just talking about plant medicines, yes.
Hmm.
Your teas or tinctures, doing the baths or the limpias, or even applying I forgot what they're called, but like when you apply something to the skin,
Hmm.
and you so all of that, when that's working with plants as well, it doesn't have to be like this crazy out of body
Mm-mm.
experience. Again, it goes back to being animist and believing that all things, all creatures, plants, everything in the world has its own spiritual or energetic soul.
Yes. Very cool. Did you think that they sort of like invoke that, like invoking the spirit of the actual plant or the spirit within the plant in order to help and aid in that healing? This is fascinating to me.
Yeah. I don't think that I wouldn't necessarily say that they invoke it. I would say that they definitely offer the guidance for the person to know what's going to happen or what's happening or what this could do for them, and then also providing a safe space, a safe
Hmm.
place, like opening, like how even in ceremony, like when we open the four corners to create a safe space within the the place where we're at, so that we can journey safely.
Yeah.
So doing that, I think it's the holding of the safe space, and
Hmm.
also being the teacher. Like they will give you a thing, but they're also explaining like this is what it's gonna do, or this is what it can
Hmm.
do, this is what it's good for, this is what it's meant for. I don't necessarily think that they invoke it. I think because the belief is there that it can work or that it will work. It's more of planting that seed in the person that who's being healed, and letting them know like this is here to help you.
Yeah, I need to have go attend a plant ceremony. I'm sure I can find one here locally. I
Yeah.
just need to do this because I have all these other questions that are popping up. Like, wait, what? So, I mean, I know I can always ask you, but it's not the same as experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah. Okay. And then talking about shamanistic healing. Shamanic healing work requires two distinct phases. So the first is the accurate diagnosis of the seen and the unseen energies at the root of the problem, and carrying out the specific choreography of energies needed to resolve the problem. So this is what you were talking about. So this is what they actually do. It's dictating like where the energies should go or need to go, and
Intention,
also
yeah.
the intention. And the shaman may serve by removing the energies that are inappropriately present, or by returning the energies that have been lost. This includes soul recovery to accomplish healing via the return of the lost parts of the soul. So this is when we talk about soul
Soul
retrieval.
retrieval, yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before on what was that, like episode 4?
Like there's like 4 episodes that we've talked about soul retrieval on.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to look back, it's episode 5. Episode 5, we talked about ancestor trauma and soul retrieval, so we get into more of that. So this is where what shamans aid with, and they can do these soul retrieval practices and help people get back those lost pieces of their
Yep,
souls.
lost fragments.
Yes. So now, today, there are obviously fewer traditional shamans left, but it is becoming a more popular, more common practice that people are more interested. We're trying to take a more natural approach to medicines, because somebody just mentioned this the other day, how when all of that happened with witch trials and women were vilified for quote unquote being witches and all of that, then what happened with our medicines is that everything became chemical based, everything became man-made, and we stopped using the gifts from the earth and that was already provided. And whether people recognize it or not, it affected like the way that how women died. It
Hmm.
affected women the most,
Yep.
because it was at that point, it was women helping other women. We had midwives who helped women give birth safely and provide these plant medicines to women to help them. And so when this was looked down upon and called out as being like wrong or evil, or they used religion to say this was devil shit. And women were the ones who suffered because now we didn't have access to these healing practices that we'd had for generations before us. So with the encroachment of civilization, the younger generation is becoming more interested in exploring the new options that are available with them. But as traditional shamanic cultures dwindle around the world, it does increase. It increases the amount of people who are worried and who are suffering around the world. So again, it's like, I guess it's like spirit working in mysterious ways, right? Like more
Right.
people suffer, so now we're looking for more alternative paths for our healing. But this is where we have to understand, like, we are the caretakers of the earth, so it's up to us to change things and to look for these avenues for healing.
Yeah, and there's so many. I'm actually going to talk about this in the closing vibe, but there are so many people that are being called to their calling, I guess, so to speak, and
Hmm.
they're so terrified of quitting their jobs in order to do this full time, but without, they don't have proof that they'll be supported, right? Well, the universe
Hmm.
isn't going to provide proof, it's going to provide support. So it's interesting to see this sort of younger generation being called to these more empathic, spiritual sort of paths, and this older generation really clutching on to that and not wanting to let go of that paycheck and those benefits.
Yeah, well, it's change is not easy for
Nope.
everyone.
Yeah.
Some people are very much afraid of change, but I also think that there is room for both, because again, going back to this idea of global consciousness and global knowledge spreading or being granted to us, or whatever, however you want to see it, whether you feel like that information may be channeled, or we didn't learn it all from each other. Like at some point, like, I know you can't necessarily say like it was pulled out of the ether, but
Right.
what if it was? you know because where it just one day, like, something just sparked on someone's mind and they just came up with this information. Like, sure, maybe, but like, how do you explain two people in two different parts of the world who had no communication with each other coming up with the same ideas, the same practices, the same rituals
I
or
mean,
similar rituals?
I know the higher self, but
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I can't go around trying to prove that to everybody. It's exhausting.
It is very
I don't have
exhausting. So
time.
either you believe it or you don't.
Yep. End of story. It's true.
But so on that same token, what I was getting to is, I think there could be some space where we can have both. Like, we can have scientific advances in medicine, but also learn to use like what we already have on the earth and has been forgotten, because these people who held these practices for so long have been oppressed and
Yeah.
separated, and all their communities destroyed. So I think there could be a middle ground. Like I was saying, this doctor who he used to do his MDMA and ketamine therapy, and now he's really largely moved away from that because he's seen what psychedelics are doing for people and what they can do for people. So he does therapy, like actual like talk therapy, and then he'll do an actual session with psychedelics where it is you're under constant supervision, and you're in a safe place. You can't hurt yourself, and so it's a very controlled environment. So why not? I mean, that's a blend of this like institutionalized medicine, right? To a way, because you go and you walk into an office and you do this whole thing, but you're also using plant medicines, you're using psychedelics to help with your healing. And what is amazing to me is, like, not discounting therapy, but people can go to therapy for years, like forever if they want to.
Right.
But he talks about how people they'll come in for a psychedelic therapy and they can walk away after one or two sessions, and that's it. They don't need to keep coming back. So that's a big thing of like, wow, like this could end this constant need, you know, medical attention for these problems. We have solutions. It's a matter of being open to them.
So tell us how shamans work with the spirit or the soul, right? Like, what are the how do they do what they do specifically? Like you talked about earlier, how mediums they don't, they can't actually work in these realms. How do
Mhm.
shamans actually do that?
Okay. So I can't speak for all shamans, but I can speak to like what I've learned to what is essentially, I guess, Mesoamerican shamanism.
Yeah.
So the way that it's done is they can journey. Not all shamans journey. And this is where you journey into a trance state. And there are several ways to get into a trance state. It can be done through breath work, it can be done through chanting, it can also be done through the shaman themselves taking the plant medicine, taking the psychedelic.
Ah, yes. Okay, so this is how they enter. These are the different ways in which they enter that altered state.
Yes, yes. But
Excellent. Very
essentially
cool.
that's what all they're doing is they're entering into altered states of consciousness, and then they are traveling to wherever they see that this
Right.
person that they're working with may need to go for their soul to get the healing that they need.
So I have a ton of clients. Like when we past lives will come up, or I'll get into their Akashic records, I'll see that they were shamans in past life.
Mhm.
And so they still have that interest, right? So what is it that what should they look for in a teacher in order, because a lot of people are interested in learning this, and even if they don't become shamanic practitioners, they still want to learn, right? So what should they look for? Like, for instance, do in a shaman school, for lack of a better term, or
Mhm.
studying with somebody one-on-one, will they actually be taught or shown firsthand how to take these individual plant medicines, what to do within after taking them in order to change your consciousness or to alter your consciousness in order to go into these journeys?
So there are several schools. So there's the Four Winds Institute. And I don't believe that they teach anything about plant medicine, like
No.
about psychedelics.
Okay.
I don't believe they do. There's also the Institute of Shamanic Healing and then the Foundation for Shamanic Studies.
Okay, so there's three that are legit.
Yeah, and these are like US
Yeah.
based, I believe, institutes, and they go through like you can actually go through like a certification
Mm-hmm.
process. But as far as I know, is like actually working with psychedelics and working with that, where how that's taught or where that's taught. Most shamans that I've known who I've met, they just travel to Brazil to
Yeah.
the Amazon
Yep.
and they learn it physically by participating in the ceremonies with the shamans themselves with
Mm-hmm.
who come from those traditions. They learn it that way and then they bring it here. Now, as far as what they should look for, okay. So there are a few guidelines that are set up by, I believe it was one of these two. It was the Institute of Shamanic Healing, I believe, that I was looking at, who sets up guidelines as far as what a shaman should do or should not do.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is, and this goes back to like any energetic work where you need to have consent.
Right.
You can't do healing work on someone who hasn't consented, and you can't do healing work for someone else just because someone else asked you to. Like if a woman comes in and says like, I think there's something wrong with my husband, like I need you to like send something, like you can't do
Can
that.
you like make him stop being a jerk, or
Yeah, that has to, because at that point again that goes to like you might be messing with their soul contract. Like you don't know what lesson that she's meant to learn by dealing with this asshole, so you can't
right?
interfere unless he consents, because he has, again, you're taking away his free
Okay, and
will.
not being so facetious, but it also could be something like a physical ailment or erectile dysfunction or something like that. Yes.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you never know. So that's one of the main principles, and I think that that seems to be pretty common throughout. Like I know I learned that with Reiki. Like with Reiki, you can
Yep.
also not, you're not supposed to do that unless you have that person's consent. And the other thing is that you should not could engage in any type of sexual relationship with your patients, like clients or whatever. Which that brings up a big red flag that I heard of the other day. Yeah, I actually heard about some person in, I'm not going to call him a shaman. This person in Las Vegas, in the Las Vegas area, who holds ayahuasca ceremonies, and during one of the ceremonies he was like making out with like a couple of the girls who were
Hmm.
also on the medicine.
Oh,
and
all right.
and they were like, yeah, no,
That
that's not
seems
okay.
legit.
Yeah, absolutely not. So again, in episode 5 I talked about like what to look for in when you're looking for maybe a ceremony or for a practitioner, because I have now been through several experiences that were not the best dealing with this kind of healing work. I think I can speak from a place of like these are things to look out for.
Yeah, I absolutely. You have developed an expertise, unfortunately,
Unfortunately.
but also fortunately, right? So,
Yeah.
and I, for one, I would completely trust you with in an altered state of consciousness, not to make out with me.
Yeah, no one has to worry about, I'm not going to do that with anyone. So. But
No tongue, no
okay, so
tongue.
one of the things to look for is how do you get into like how do you get in with, if we're talking about plant medicine ceremonies specifically, I will ask, like, how are these people, how are you vetted into the thing? Do you just sign up and go and you can just show up? And then I also want to know how many people are showing up to these things. Like in the age of COVID, this has gotten convoluted because like I went to a ceremony, the person who was overseeing this, she started spewing out conspiracy theories talking about getting
Oh
chipped and all this
no!
shit.
Why would
Yes.
they do that?
And that should have been my first indicator of like, get the fuck out of here. But I was like, no, I'm already here. I'm like,
Right.
but anyway,
I,
so
I probably wouldn't have either, just so you know. Just to
yeah,
make you feel better. I'd been like, hell no, I paid my money. I'm
I
staying.
already paid. I already paid. But so how many people are there? Because again, in the age of COVID, like you might deal with a lot of people. Unfortunately, this community of people who push towards like natural things and this kind of stuff, because they're so like, oh, we have everything that we need from the earth, they don't believe that like vaccines work. But it's like, but also the information maybe came to the consciousness of the scientists who developed this vaccine,
Jesus
so how about that,
Christ.
like,
Yeah, and the CDC has a 6.5, it's either million or billion-dollar goddamn budget to actually, research, product
yeah,
development, all of these things. They're made up of a team of, the most educated science professionals, if we're going to give them a term, in the world.
yeah,
And it's certainly, they know certainly more than you and your stupid herbal,
Google.
yeah, your stupid Google, you know conspiracy theory nonsense. So, oh my god, don't get it,
Yeah,
don't get me started.
don't get me started either. Yeah, so that would be like a huge like red flag for me. How many people are attending this thing? Because I would like, one thing is like, because if it's too big of a group, are you going to be able to get the attention that you require if you're having a difficult time with the
I
medicine?
would say no. I mean, I would say that in any group,
Right,
classrooms,
right.
45 kids, they're not going to get the individual attention needed by the teacher. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, that would be one of those things, is like who is overseeing this, how many people are there, how many people are attending, and then is there integration? Because if there is an integration at the end of the ceremony, integration I think is like, it's half. It's half of the work. Like
yeah,
half of
absolutely.
this is taking the medicine, experiencing it and going through that, but the other half of it is integration, because you will find that when you are in a group of people, I think it's because, again, it's like that group consciousness that happens. You are working through things that maybe for other people in the room and vice versa.
Right.
So when you go through integration and everyone talks about their experiences, you are going to find that there are things that pop up about other people talking about what they went through.
Right.
Then you're gonna be like, wow, that, yes, like
That's
I felt
exactly
that
me.
too.
Yep.
Yes, that's
Yep.
exactly me.
Yep.
So that if there's no integration with that ceremony, I would not do it. I would not participate.
Listen, and just so you guys know, the Journey of the Wild, we have made sure that all of these are present.
Yes.
There
That's why
it's a
it's a
small
small
group.
group.
Yep. And there's integration.
Yes.
And
And
what was the other thing that you were like?
and we're at, and you need to have, I'm sorry, but you need to have your vaccine before, if you can, if you
No,
want to
yeah,
attend.
yep, yep, yeah. It
That's a
provide
no.
proof.
Yep.
Slap that ID down. I've been
Yeah.
vaxxed. Bitches, let me
Yeah.
in.
You know what? There was this woman this weekend that I met, and she was saying how Oh, I'm not gonna get the vaccine because if God wants me to die, then I'll just die. And I'm like,
Thoughts and
but
prayers.
then I'm like, that's exactly why I got the vaccine, because if God wants me to die, then I'll just die. Like, you
Right. Either way, you're playing roulette, you
oh God,
dumbass.
what is that? You know that parable of like the man in the boat,
Yeah.
like the
Wait a
drowning
minute.
man
No,
in the
that's a
boats,
different one.
where
That's
like
the man in the canoe. That's not the same thing.
the where he's out in the ocean and he's drowning, and he asks God, God, please save me. And then a boat comes, and then and he's like, no, no, it's fine, God's gonna save me. And then another boat comes, and he's like, no, no, it's fine, God's coming to save me. And then the third boat comes, and he tells that one to leave too. And then he drowns and he dies and he goes to heaven. And then he's like, God, what happened? You let me die. He's like, I sent you three boats, what do you
You
want?
dumbass. Okay, I have to tell you to turn off my mic because I was busting up laughing because the man in the canoe is totally different, and
Okay.
people are just gonna have to Google it to figure out what the hell it means if they don't already know.
But anyway, I'm just saying that if we have been given like a possible solution, why not take it? I mean, yes, like, also absolutely strengthen your immune system, take your vitamins, eat good foods. Yes, avoid large crowds
All the
right now.
things. Wear a
Do all the
mask.
things. Wear a mask. Do the things. Like, what's it gonna hurt? Like, and the thing is, it's like, it's not just my body, my choice. No. Like, and stop using
Tangent
pro-choice
people.
rhetoric.
Mask tangent people.
Yeah, stop using pro-choice rhetoric about masks. Like,
It doesn't work.
pregnancies are not contagious.
No.
And me getting COVID and just walking around willy-nilly, possibly infecting people, I am now encroaching on the other person's right to not be sick.
And
So,
anyway, those of them, we'll say them because none of our listeners would think like this, but those of them that use that pro-choice rhetoric are typically those who are against pro-choice. So it doesn't work. You can't have it both sides of the the frying pan, whatever that is. It's just dumb. Hey, I
yes.
have a question.
Hmm.
Can you tell us about why rhythmic drumming is so um, central to a journey, a shamanic journey?
It goes back to binaural beats and how the different um, hertz put us in different states,
Of
and how
consciousness.
our consciousness, and how different states of consciousness resonate with certain levels of sound.
So it's like science.
Yes.
Always,
Yeah, that's
always.
that.
It's either aliens or it's science.
Or both. I mean, eventually it's gonna be
It's
both.
eventually both. Aliens are science.
Yeah, they are science fiction for some people, but yeah, I think
Hmm,
I
hmm,
think they're out there.
hmm.
But yeah. Oh, the other thing that I was going to mention about journeying, shamans also journey through the use of spirit guides, of spirit
Yes,
animals.
they do.
Yeah, so that's the other way that they can do things. So, actually, one of the articles that I read, that a cave and it was about 10,000 years ago that this woman was buried, and the way in which she was buried and the artifacts that were buried with her included like feathers and also stones like placed in certain areas. The way that her knees were folded in for her burial, it just showed that this person, like, it was of certain veneration to the community. So this was probably
Oh,
a
very
shaman.
cool.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool. So the position in which you were buried sort of indicates your status within the community. Is that what you're
yes,
saying? Very
mm-hmm,
cool. Very cool.
yeah, yeah. So that was like evidence of a shaman from like 10,000 years ago.
I think my favorite takeaway from this is that how shamans working with the spirit can heal illnesses at a soul level. Now, do you think that those, well, I mean, I think you've indicated this, but those illnesses not aren't only physiological, they can also be mental and emotional. Yes?
Yes, mm-hmm,
Yes. All right.
yeah.
So, for instance, I could get help with my desire for snacks. Like, I'm not
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
not kidding. I'm not
yeah.
making a joke, which I kind of am, but Like I have a sugar addiction, and I don't know where the hell it came from, and I don't know, like I never used to like sugar, but it feels like it's just within the last year where sugar is the thing I crave.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have cravings other than sugar, so and I don't eat a ton of sugar either. Well, that's not true because I cave to the cravings.
Because you
So
have. So there was this psychologist that I was listening to the other day, and she's actually like a psychologist, but also now she's gone in like the nutrition field,
yeah,
and she talks about how cravings can have a psychological,
it absolutely does. It's
yeah, a psychological origin
yep.
to them. So for example, sweets, it's if you crave sweets, sometimes it has to do because like you feel that you're lacking sweetness in your
Wha-
life, like you're lacking someone to be
oh,
like kind to you or sweet to you,
oh,
like someone to be nice to you. Yeah.
or you are lacking a life partner.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, well that's it. That's it. I'm gonna find a shaman and just to experience that and see if that can be addressed.
Yes.
Hmm.
So okay. So the one of the last things I wanted to share were some kind of, this is written by Alberto Villolobo. So he's the doctor, it's also a shaman. And he talks about what the shaman is. So the shaman is a person of knowledge and power. He or they use power and knowledge in service. They know that love is the organizing principle of the universe. They know that creation is not complete. We help to dream the world into being. They know that they are not the one who have has left the garden, that is, it is not separate from nature. They know that everything is infused with spirit and with life. They see the organizing principle of the universe and the archetypes. They are in service for the good of all beings and of the earth.
Yes.
They have a high sense of ethics. They work through intent.
Hmm.
They know the faces of the shadow, both personal and the collective. They hold and create sacred space. Even with intent, they do not fix the outcome. They have no attachment to result.
Right.
They know that power can heal and also destroy, and they use it wisely. They know to work at source, at the energetic level. They know that we are here not only to grow corn, but to grow gods. They know that everything is light bound into matter. They know that being present with intent can shift the world. They live in synchronicity. They live with impeccability. They know that if you don't learn it, you marry it. That means you're stuck to it, or it comes to you as fate. They know that thought directs energy and energy directs matter. And they know that will is control and that intent is surrender.
Hmm.
They understand the universe to be benign, not predatory, that the universe conspires on your behalf. They know that reality are those myths that we can't quite see through yet. And they look for confirmation in nature and in synchronistic events like signs or omens. And they know that when you call spirit, spirit answers, and that when spirit calls, you must answer.
Girl, listen, I felt like a Baptist congregant when I was sitting there listening to that. That is some legit shit. And it's those tenets are universal. Those are universal. That is not specific to one religion, but what a beautiful sort of homage to, what it means to be, a shamanic practitioner. Um, you guys, we will post that on all the socials because that was beautiful, and I think it's
Yeah.
necessary that it be shared. Yay! Thank you so much. That was awesome. What good information? Because I
Huh.
just had my little notebook here, and I realized I asked about 17 questions. So, I'm familiar with shamanism. I have been to a few journeys here and there, but it's not a topic that I would normally dive into. It's just not my thing. But wow, I really like how you've given me some information, or all of us some information.
Thank
I hope
you.
people
Thank you.
pursue any interest in learning more about shamanic practices.
Yes. So I am going to link some articles that I found, like the historical stuff, um, and also a couple books. So there's a book called Follow the Shaman's Call, An Ancient Path for Modern Lives, and that is by Mike Williams. And the book that I read by Alberto Villoldo, it is called Illumination, The Shaman's Way of Healing.
Beautiful.
It is such an excellent book. You know when you get a book and you're like, "Oh my god, this is so good. Like I got to like underline, I got to
Yes.
highlight." Like it was like I wanted to highlight underline this whole book.
Right. Right.
It's so good. Yeah, I love that book. So those are the two books I'll link in the show notes if anyone's interested in more reading, but also I'll link the articles and stuff that I got some of this information from.
Do you actually highlight and make notes in your books?
Yes,
I
I do.
do. I do.
Yeah.
Books are, I love it.
I have no intent of ever like if it's a book like that where like, oh my god, all this resonated, I'm
Yep.
never gonna let go of that
Never.
book. So I figured I'm just gonna have it
No,
and
it's going
look
to be
back
a
on it.
resource for years and years to come. Yeah, if
Hmm.
there's nothing in it, you know, you're like, yeah, I don't want this book. All right. So, the closing vibe.
Oh yes. What do you got something for us?
Yeah. So, a lot is coming out of the Akasha right now. You know, the readings have just been really big and intense and pivotal for people. You know, getting people to see where they are and pointing them in a new direction. So that's sort of where the energies are this time. And the thing that comes up the most commonly is that people are afraid of making these major changes, you know. And
Hmm.
I know that the way that I did it, I make it seem like it was easy, but it wasn't. You know, just leaving the corporate world and then all of a sudden, boom, starting this new life. But so I'm reading this book, Bringing Your Soul to Light, and there's just some amazing insight from Spirit in here. Through all of the soul regressions, the life between life and past life regressions, the messages come out of that. And so there's
Hmm.
a couple that I wanted to share with our listeners because it really is um, right now what you should, and you know I don't like that word, but should be doing is looking at what's holding you back from making the potential a potential life change. Not everybody's meant to make that change, right? Not everybody's meant to leave the corporate world and go into business. But what's happening is that right now, you know, because there are so many of us that are becoming woke, that are awakening, that are transcending, that are ascending, you know, and we're really slow to change. And so your spirit guides are coming through and saying, listen, this is what you need to know because this needs to happen. So
Hmm.
the physical person needs to be supported in all ways possible for their success to achieve their soul contract. So if you've written a soul contract for your, you have, we've all written a soul contract. Spirit knows that you have to be supported in order to be successful. You're not here just walking around without support. And then they say, few are awake, but many are coming awake. The planet Earth and its inhabitants are very slow to change. And those of you who can assist with change carry a higher density or vibration. Those are light workers. You just have a naturally higher density or vibration. So, what you need to do, you need to trust to do what you are drawn to do. If you're drawn to do energy work, do it in some way, even if it's not full time, do it part time, do it as a side gig, do it for free, whatever. But you have to trust that what you're drawn to do is what you are here to do. So what's happening is that many stay in discomfort out of fear. And for those who move out of fear, it's this huge shift in revelation because it's that unpredictability, right, that triggers fear.
Hmm.
Oh, you know, am I going to have enough money? Or am I going to have benefits? I don't want my family to starve. I don't, you know, I have a mortgage. I have all these things. So that's the front end of it. Okay. And so the back end of it is that when they say, now, how do you do that? Right. So basically, they say any of us can easily become sidetracked by our human nature. That's the very nature of us as humans. It's by our thought processes. They pull us into skepticism and, you know, they pull us away from what we know in our heart of hearts to be true or at the soul
Hmm.
level.
Hmm.
And they say we can easily get caught up worrying about things like financial stability and what others might think. And so, what our guides and teachers most want us to know is to encourage us to remain steadfast, to remain focused, and to trust that the guidance that we need will always, always, always be there. So, That is my closing vibe, for those
That's great.
people who are really afraid to make that pivot, make that leap of faith. You don't have to do it in a major way, in a way that's going to cause instability or fear in your life. But you do need to step outside of your comfort zone and slowly start working toward that thing that's going to feed your soul. And one of the things that is sort of encouraging that process, if you call it encouraging, is an increased sense of dissatisfaction. So if you're feeling dissatisfied with your life, baby, that is not going to change. It's only
Yeah.
going to get more intense. So you have to say, why am I feeling this? Because that dissatisfaction isn't there to give you this horrible outlook on life, or think that my life sucks, or think that, I don't get to experience the same sort of joy that this other person does. It's there to get you to pay attention to it and do something about
Yeah.
it. And there's my closing line.
That's great. That one's sometimes hard to hear. Things aren't going to get better unless you make a
Yeah,
change.
it
But
it really isn't. Things aren't gonna. They're not gonna get better.
yeah, and it's sometimes it's really hard sometimes when you're in it.
So hard.
It's important to take a look back and think of like, what other hard things have I been through, and
Right.
what was the outcome of that? Did that turn out to be better for me? Like I know this happens. It's happened a couple of times, like with my husband, like he's lost his job. And I got to the point though where I realized, I'm like, do you realize that every time you've lost a job, you end up with something better?
Yes.
And so
Yep.
the last time it happened, I was like, it's fine.
Yep. Yep. You have
It's
faith.
yeah, no, this is going to put you into
Yep.
something better. Like this was not where you were supposed to be,
No.
and you hadn't made the choice yourself,
No.
and it had to be made for you. But
Yep.
it's gonna it all turn out, and it has. So
Yes.
yes.
And that's where people get the misconception that they have the worst luck, or their life sucks, or they're not given the same opportunities that other people is because the universe makes those choices for you. You have a team of spirit guides that are entrusted with your soul blueprint. They know exactly where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. So in the human form, when you're resisting it, they're like, look, bitch, I'm paid to do this. They're not really paid, but this is my job and you're
This is
keeping
my
me from
job.
doing my job. So look, we're going to just create this so that, and to you, it's like, life sucks. It hates me. This is the worst thing ever. But Spirit's like,
Yeah.
no, actually, it's not. I'm not kidding. Like, I would challenge someone out there. If you know somebody, send us an email at esotericspodcast@gmail.com. So if there's somebody out there who says, I have the worst luck and it is because I am being punished or whatever, I would challenge you to write us. I will read those and I will pick the person who legitimately has the worst luck, and I will get into your Akashic record for no charge, and I will see what's going on, and I will bet that it is you being pivoted, positioned, or whatever,
Mm.
and you're not listening to your spirit guides. And so that's my challenge to anybody out there listening, to send me your worst luck stories and we'll pick one, and I'll bet you
Yeah.
money. Well, not money. I'll bet you free reading.
Well, that's money. So
That's money. That is
that is
money.
money. So
Your spirit guides are like, you're just not listening.
well, I can't wait to see if somebody takes you
I
up on
know,
that.
that'll be interesting.
Yes.
Hmm.
All right. Well, before we sign off, I did want to mention thank you guys for sharing our podcast. That really helps us to get out there and get into more ears. We appreciate that. If you haven't done so
Yes.
already, please leave us a review on Apple Podcast, because that always helps us grow our audience. And we appreciate you very, very much.
Yes, we do appreciate you so much. It's just really fun to meet people that learn about us strictly from our podcast. Very
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
You can find us on all the socials under Esoteric Podcast, and be sure to join our Facebook group, the Woke Akashic group, to hear firsthand, about classes and events and intuitive development tips, and just have a cool place with kindred, like-minded people to just sort of share your experience of awakening and so on, so much more.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing space with us today. Stay mystical, magical, and ready to do it again next week when we will be talking about.
We are going to learn about um, night terrors, but from the viewpoint of the incubus and the succubus.
Oh,
I know, right? It's going to be a really fun conversation. And so, yeah.
I'm excited. All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye bye.